Welcome to Mind Your Wedding Business Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Dennis. In addition to leading the charge at Wedding IQ, I also run Fantasy Sound Event Services, a lighting and entertainment company based in Livermore, California, that I founded over 35 years ago. Each week on this podcast, you'll hear thought-provoking and empowering interviews with wedding professionals who have found success in the industry. If you're a business-minded wedding pro who loves love, but also cares about their bottom line, buckle up and get ready to learn from a new industry expert each week. All right, folks, welcome to another episode of Mind Your Wedding Business Podcast. We're with Adrienna McDermott. Did I say it all right? I think I did.
Yes, correct.
Yes. All right, she's with Ava and the Bee, and she's here to talk about marketing trends for 2025. So this is going to be a must. I mean, I think it's the right time of the year that we're talking about all this good stuff. So, Adrienna, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here today?
Hi. Yeah, I have an interesting journey. I feel like I've lived many lives before even the bee. So I got my start in wedding industry in high school. I worked in accessory design, and then I worked for a hat maker for a while. I went to school for textile and hat making, millinery. But to pay for a very expensive art school, I worked bridal retail. So I worked at David's Bridal and then private boutiques. And anyone who's worked retail knows it's hard. I mean, you're commission based. So I had to learn really fast the wedding industry / working in a commission based environment where I had to figure out how to sell to a complete stranger who's naked in front of me to buy my next set of books. So that was kind of like my interesting foray into the wedding industry. It was there, and I fell in love with it really fast. And then when I was still in college, my senior year of college, I co-opened a wedding planning, floral, and bridal boutique company. Because again, young, fearless, what is more debt, right? Like, who cares? Did that for quite a few years. And then in 2018, sold my half of the company, just kind of needed some space. I had a co-owner. And then I started Ava and the Bee really just simply out of my friends were like, hey, can you help me market my business? You've been in the wedding industry at this point for, 8 or so years at this point, just come on in and help me out. And next thing you know, it's now an agency. We have 5 employees and we help hundreds of professionals a year, which is crazy. If you would have told me I would have even helped a dozen wedding professionals as a marketer, I would have thought you were crazy. But alas, going into year 6. And that's how I got here.
That's amazing. So I burning question for me. I have a daughter named Ava. So how do we get the name Ava and the Bee?
Yeah, great question. I get this asked all the time. People meet me, they're like, are you Adrienna or Ava? So Ava is kind of just a family nickname that people call me because my name's really long. And so I knew for SEO, I wasn't going to have Adrienna anywhere in my business name. So I went with Ava because it was a nice nickname. And then the Bee is my cat, Brutus.
Oh, okay. Love it.
He's my BB, my boy. So
it's a cute name. So
yeah.
Anyway. All right. So we're here talking marketing, trends for 2025. I feel like things are changing. And before we hit the good old record button here, we were even talking about how TikTok might be going away. So I guess to start off, kind of where are we going? Can you give us a little bit of the state of the marketing industry?
Yeah, as of this recording, who knows what TikTok is going to be doing? I know they're literally debating it as we sit here, but it's one of those things where the last few years we've been seeing a shift post pandemic. And I would say in the last year, the biggest shift that I would say we've seen when it comes to marketing is that couples simply don't book referrals like they used to. They have to do their own research. And last year was the first time we ever started getting inquiries that kept saying over and over and over again, they're booking more expensive vendors because they're researching and my online presence isn't up to par, right? They're competing with a 21-year-old who can charge a lot because their online presence looks really cool, right? It's like the cool kids club. And we started getting inquiries that were like, oh man, snap, they're doing research and I haven't updated my website or I'm not on social. And so I think the biggest shift is really as we go into 2025, it's even more than it was even last year. Couples and consumers, this is not just like a wedding industry thing. They have to do their own research. According to Vogue Business, 70% of Gen Z and 69% of millennials will only trust a brand after that research phase. So it's something that I like to tell my clients. It's not just the wedding industry. This is like a consumer buying habit. we were locked up for years and we had to do our own research. And now we're just naturally attuned to it. Like anything you want to do nowadays, you're Googling it and figuring it out. Where couples are going to do that times 10 because they're spending thousands of dollars on something, right? So that has been definitely the huge shift that we've been adjusting even our marketing offers. So like as a marketer, what I offered in 2018 is not really the same as what we offer now because we've had to shift and adjust. So what I mean by that is we have to think about the online presence as a whole. It's no longer just I have an Instagram. It's like, okay, does that feed into a website that's converting? Are you focusing on an SEO strategy? Do you have a PR strategy? Like it's becoming more of this ecosystem instead of just being like my venue sent me some referrals. So definitely the biggest thing is just understanding that they are gonna Google you and they're gonna look at everything you got out there. Like an expired Facebook profile from 10 years ago is coming up and they're gonna look at it. And what if they think you're closed? Because there's a really good chance they're going to see that and be like, oh, are they still open? So it's kind of in that social age of like, are you coming up and are you actually looking like you're open and alive and working?
Wow. That's a lot to take in.
Yeah, I started with the big one because I feel like it carries all the rest of the conversation.
Drop the bomb.
Yes.
All right. So I guess after hearing all that, where do we start? Or where do we, like, step one, where do we go?
Yeah. So definitely the very first thing is I want our vendors to think about what is my online presence? Like what are the platforms that are coming up in that Google search? Because we know they're going to be searching regardless of price point. I think a really big misconception is that high-end couples don't also Google, but like statistically, we know, Think Splendid comes out with yearly reports. They just came out with their luxury and ultra luxury report. And 81% of luxury couples found a vendor from Google last year, and that's up from 2023. Like it went up. They're actually using it even more. So if they're Googling, like it doesn't matter. 81% of luxury, 78% of ultra luxury, that's $500,000 and up according to Think Splendid, found at least one vendor from an internet search. Like if that doesn't prove to you how important your SEO and Google is, then like I truly don't know what other status to throw at you.
No, you really don't.
So we got to start thinking, okay, what does my online presence ecosystem consist of? So obviously, first and foremost, your website. If you haven't touched it in years because you had a really busy couple years and you have outdated weddings, they're seeing that. And what they're doing is they're comparing you to the person who has updated everything and has consistent messaging. So that's one of the things inside of like our agency, we started doing more website design because we realized that's like the ecosystem of your online presence. So when you're marketing, the goal when you hire someone like me is I need your website to convert. Like I have to warm them up. I have to give them a billion touch points and they're all going to eventually lead to your website, right? Like your Pinterest, going to lead to your website. Your Instagram is hopefully DMs or your website. Google, blogging, newsletters, like everything in the ecosystem ends up there. So if we don't have a really strong foundation there, you've completely lost them in transit because they're like, this doesn't look like what I saw on TikTok, right? Like they have this killer TikTok and their website's garbage. Like they're actually going to think twice. Okay. I mean, just as a consumer, like if you're looking for a hairstylist and their website's garbage, you're probably going to have a second thought. You're going to be like, oh, maybe not. So kind of first and foremost is think about where are the platforms that I'm online, including my website, and is it up to date? Does it have up to date information and pricing? Are my images up to date? Is it consistent? Like so many times I look and they'll have different logos that are like one's an old logo, one's a new logo, or their colors don't match, or their copy sounds like ChatGPT. Like guys, they notice all of this, y'all. Like I do hundreds of audits a year on websites, hundreds. They notice. I can instantly tell within 5 seconds that a robot wrote your website and your couples are smart and they're going to read it and be like, it's kind of awkward. So just kind of the first step is to really at the beginning of the year, really just look at all of the pieces of your puzzle. I always encourage people, send it to your friends not in the wedding industry and just ask them like, would you hire me? Because that's a complete stranger. Like asking your best friend who's a florist is going to be like, of course I'd hire you. Your website's perfect. Like they're not going to tell you the real stuff. Like ask someone you know who's going to be honest and say, hey, like, would you trust me based off of this?
So how often, okay, so like my company just redid our website and we put all a bunch of, newer photos and the whole thing in.
we're on a newer platform and all that stuff. But then how often should we be touching it? Like with photos, and is it multiple times throughout the year, every month? Like what is there a good number for that?
So I usually suggest just twice a year. It's something where I mean,
Okay.
if you do it at least once a year, you're literally way better than probably 75% of your competition. But even just twice a year, just to make sure, like, hey, maybe I have a really great wedding that I want to swap out my galleries for. It's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of it's your storefront. So think about it when you go to Target or any store, the front of the store changes for a reason. It's a psychological sales reason. They want to get you to pause at the front door. So if we're
Mm-hmm.
changing it up, sometimes they can also just help with that. Like, oh, like I've been searching for this vendor for a while, especially if you're later in that funnel and they're looking at you like 47 times because you're not an early buying decision. Sometimes they can be kind of nice because it'll like bring them in like, oh, that's a new picture, and it makes them pause.
Wow. Okay. So I was thinking you were going to say like every like couple months. So, but I think, twice a year is more than doable. So the fact that no one's doing it is silly on their part. So
Exactly.
it's just, especially because it sounds like the website, like you were saying, this is your store. This is like having, for people that don't have a storefront, that is your storefront. And that's where they're going to, like you're walking them into your showroom, so to speak. At that point. And if it's not clean and not up to date, then we're going to move on, it sounds like.
Especially because there's a lot of options. I mean, they can look at 20 different websites in a 30-minute time span. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where whenever we're buying, the second you get a pause, you're out. It's just a natural thing. It's and especially when you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on something, the second you're like, maybe, you're not going to invest in that. You're not going to buy a maybe. You buy a yes, not a maybe. So if you're giving them a second of maybe, well, they're going to go to someone who gave them a yes, and like inside.
All right. So we've swept the showroom and we got it all clean. So I'm sorry. You can laugh at me all you want. My staff does it all the time. But anyway, so we're ready to go. We got the website looking good. We've updated our photos a couple times throughout the year. Now where are today's couples going next?
Yeah, so there's a few different things we can kind of dive into. So one is definitely going to be how can you utilize SEO strongly, and that's going to be through a really great blogging strategy. I feel like I'm hoping that people realize that blogging isn't like dead, especially in our industry, because they're going to be wanting to search and consume more information. So this is especially great, honestly, for any vendor, regardless if you're a venue and you're the first book or you're like stationary or like 6 months in. But they're going to be doing, as we know, a lot of research, which means they have a lot of questions. And so whenever we're thinking about like the online world, so everybody has hopefully at this point noticed that when you Google something, Reddit comes up really high. And I could talk about Reddit for about 75 hours. Reddit comes up, right? Google's algorithm is changing. It's prioritizing other people giving answers. It's just, it's a whole vibe happening right now. And what it tells us is that people want answers to questions that aren't on every other platform, right? They want something that feels special to them, whether it's in their city, their price point. Like we're seeing a really consistent thing in Reddit. So you name the Reddit, I'm in it. I have a separate phone. I'm in Facebook groups. I'm in Discord channels. Like you name the forum, I'm in it. Like I'm creeping. And so I'm looking at all these questions they're asking, and it really reemphasizes for us as marketers how important your blog can be to answer those questions. Because if they're going to internet strangers to ask about what planner to hire, because they will ask that, we need to be better educating them. So I think we as the industry need to be better at being the ones to educate them to move them forward to the decision-making process instead of them just hopefully going to Reddit and hoping that some internet stranger answers it for them. So really thinking about, okay, even if I'm blogging once a month, that's 12 questions. I want you to just think about what are 12 questions that I can be the expert and answer. And those become your blog posts. Now, of course, more localized answers, right? You're not just going to be like answering anything generic. But even if it's just 12 commonly asked questions that you can answer and then maybe use them in your sales funnel, like y'all, if you're getting the same question over and over again, why don't you have a blog or video that answers it for them?
Like video, right? Video.
Yes.
Yes.
Like so when they're in that sales funnel, you can send them something and say, hey, I know at this point of the decision, you're wondering about how our album process works. Here's a little, 3-minute video. It goes over how our albums work. If no one else around you is doing that, they're going to remember you. Remember, it's just like little touch points to make it really memorable. So it's like, what can we be using your content for that you then use that on Instagram and you repurpose the heck out of it? But like, why are we not being the ones to be the expert in that sales funnel? Why are we letting them go to other places? So help control the narrative around it.
And it's funny you brought up Reddit because I went to a wedding conference at the end of last year, and the Reddit was talked about a lot. And it was something that I, as a wedding professional, never in a million years even thought about. But then, and so we immediately started searching our company's name, and then we did find the name a couple of times, all positive, thankfully. But it was like in a million years, like I never would have thought to creep in there and get in there and answer questions and be that person. But that's where they're going. So
I've been a Redditor for 13 years. I've been in these groups for 13 years. Yeah. Going on year 14 of being in these in these Reddits. Once you find me on Reddit, you'll know who I am because I'm a lurker, man. I am 14 years of comments. But they are, and they've been doing it for 14 years. They've been doing it since I started in the industry. So this is nothing new. It's just we're at the stage where it's becoming more like searchable. So it's like they've been in these Facebook groups talking about y'all for the last decade. Y'all's names have been mentioned for decades. Just no one realized it. And so now we got to like utilize it as our market research.
I mean, it's interesting you bring that up because I go to Google for everything when I'm trying to find something, and Reddit does come up now. And you kick in there, you can find sometimes the answer to your questions through a Reddit. I guess it's a feed or a post or whatever they call the thing. But so it is really becoming, I'm searching, if you say, you're Philly, right? You feel you're, wedding planner in Philly, like there's probably a million wedding planner posts in Philly.
100%. And I know, so with Think Splendid stats that just came out, because I bought them the second they came out, 18% of luxury couples found a vendor through Reddit and Reddit or an online forum. 23% of ultra luxury found a vendor through Reddit or an online forum.
Wow.
So it's like, and that wasn't even really a stat like 2 years ago. So it's definitely taking off. My biggest tip for marketing on Reddit, because this is usually I get asked all the time, is you can't really actually market on Reddit, y'all, because the minute they find out you're a vendor, they don't like you anymore. They don't want vendors. You have to be really, really, really careful with marketing on Reddit. So what I tell people, because we've been testing things out over the last year, it's hard to be a vendor on Reddit and not get downvoted to oblivion. So what I tell people is, for now, this might change in a year, but as of 2025, use Reddit as your market research and creep. Don't try to get clients off of there. Don't try to DM clients, because if you start messaging people on Reddit, the moderators will find out. They will kick you out of that group. So just be really cautious, because in the last 6 months, vendors have infiltrated Reddit. So it used to be like, there were like 6 of us on there, and we had a little fan club. Now every vendor's on Reddit, which is fine, but you can't really poach clients. I say use it as a market research only. See what questions they're asking, how you can answer that in a social media post. Like if you don't know what to post on Instagram today, go to Reddit, find a question, answer it. There's your Instagram post. Use it as your content machine. That's what y'all, my secret sauce for content. People have asked me for the last decade, Adrienna, how do you have so many ideas for content? And the answer was always Reddit. And now everybody knows my secret. The answer is Reddit. When we don't know what to write about, we go to Reddit, we find a question, and we answer it. So do that.
Well, I mean, it's simple. And that's the thing. It's like some of us that have been around a long time, we have the answers to all these questions that they're searching. Yeah. And so we just got to get in front of them in a certain way.
Yeah.
So social media, where are we? I mean, we talked about TikTok possibly leaving our world, which is so many people crying in tears. But with that said, our company gets more action on Instagram than we do on TikTok. So where are the 25 couples coming with social media?
Yeah. So, I mean, Instagram will always be a tried and true wedding thing, especially, we don't know what obviously any other platform is going to be doing in a week. So Instagram, the biggest thing with Instagram is, I mean, obviously the biggest complaint we hear, because we manage a lot of accounts, is, last year, obviously engagement is hard. So the biggest thing with Instagram that we need to remember is we need to be considering it as more about engagement and less about followers. Like we have clients with crazy engagement who have under 5,000 followers. Like your number of followers does not mean how many clients you book off of it. And it does not mean how engaged your audience is. Your engagement is what matters. And what I mean by that are people commenting? Are they liking your posts? Are they sharing your posts? And that's all information that you can get inside of the analytics if you have like a business or creator account. So if you don't have that yet, you should just go do it now, because if you don't know how people are engaging with your content, you don't know what works. So the biggest thing with Instagram that we've seen that increase engagement, because that's like our number one goal is engagement. Like followers are cool. I want them engaging and paying you money. That's what like I'm, really concerned about as a marketer is, yeah, it's like, I'm like, I want them to pay you money. Like follower account's cool, but that's not going to pay the bills. A few things. First, obviously video. I mean, I know it's been a broken record. My biggest thing for video though is invest in having some kind of content creator get behind the scenes of you guys this year. Because if you don't have great video, social media managers like me can't make magic. So if it's like really bad lighting, not great video, I'm not going to post it because it's not going to get you engagement. Like look at your feed and you're going to see everything is shot even on an iPhone in like 4K now. So my biggest thing around that, because the number one thing is, well, I don't have time on the wedding day. I know. Hire someone. There are content creators in every single city that do this. I have one on my team that does this. Like have them come in for a few hours on a few of your biggest weddings, the ones where you know you're going to get good stuff, and get transformation video before and after. Those perform time and time again, regardless of what kind of vendor you are. You're a DJ, empty dance floor, grandma raging, hair and makeup before, after, like before and afters, like piece of cake, right? You get like 30-second clip before, 30-second after. So consider investing in having a content creator or someone who you know that's good at iPhone video and getting some high quality video that you can repurpose. The second thing with video is the good news is that doesn't have to be long. Our best performing is anywhere from 8 to 12 seconds are our best performing reels. So if you have like 2 minutes of content on a wedding day, that's, I don't know, 1 billion reels. Like I can't math, but like that's a lot. So you don't have to have hours of content, right? Like I'm not telling you to just, stand there for hours. I'm saying get a few minutes and then break it down into like 10-second little clips. When it comes to what other stuff gets really good engagement, definitely carousel posts, single posts, just don't do it. Just do a carousel at this point. There's no reason not to share more than 10 images. Most accounts have more than 10 images. Some of our clients don't yet, but it's like one of those rollout features. So eventually you should have up to 20. So do carousels. Another thing that works really well is vendor collaboration posts. I know they're the hardest to get. Like I know you trying to get all the vendors to cross post it, especially my photographers. Y'all are so concerned about the feed that you get nervous that the post won't be perfect. I know it takes us talking to people, but your collaboration posts, the engagement will be through the roof because you're automatically in front of multiple audiences, especially if you can get on a venues one. Anytime we can collaborate with a venue, it's like, woo, skyrocket. Because they have typically the most engaged audiences, are the venues.
Yeah, it's when you said that made me think. It's like most of the time when I'm meeting with clients and they're at the venue, I'm like, oh, are you following their Instagram? Okay, that's a great way to see what we can and can't do out there. Like that's a great way. And I push them there as well. So,
yeah.
And
then my last kind of piece for Instagram of what to spend your time on is stories. Instagram stories have higher engagement pretty much than any other thing you're going to do right now, even reels for a lot of people. It's not just, it's so statistically, Instagram has said multiple times over the last year that Gen Z prefer stories. It makes sense. It's the swiping. It's fast, right? Like they're not like, but even me, I'm a millennial and I'm never in the feed anymore. I'm in the stories.
And I'm older than you and I'm very ever the feed. I'm on stories and I go for, sometimes I just get stuck.
And the engagement is better because for some reason for me, and maybe this is just a me, I don't feel as nervous when I reply to a story than when I comment. I don't know why. Like when I comment on someone's post, it feels like weirdly permanent. But when I like DM someone like, oh my God, love that. Like that opened up a conversation that didn't feel as heavy. And I think it's kind of just has to do with like our society as a whole of like, like we don't want to come outside our bubble. So I don't know. Instagram stories though, it's just such an easy thing. Try to make it a pillar to like post a few a week and don't be scared to show like behind the scenes and yourself. Like I don't think we know that couples tend to gravitate towards people that they feel comfortable with. And how are they going to feel comfortable with you if they've never seen you or your face or your team?
Yeah, well, we hired a brand manager for for my fantasy sound company, and basically, I joke that we pay her to make fun of me, and it's
And it worked.
it's funny. I've never had so many people go, what are you guys doing now? What do you guys do? You know, they want to know what we're working on, and we've done all kinds of crazy things. And we just keep trying, we keep coming up with ideas. And she's got one that she's working on right now about being the most interesting man in the wedding, in the wedding world. Yeah, but she used AI to get that voice from the commercial and kind of mimic the commercial. I mean, but people aren't eating this stuff up, and you can't, so it's like we're letting, I joke, I call it our freak flag, but we're letting our freak flag fly a little bit, but also being serious. And we started some series and done different things, but we found the video engagement is just through the roof. It's
100%.
not even like we still do the posts, and then you were saying do carousel because we still do single posts. So I'm going to recommend to her, let's do some carousel posts, because it sounds like, again, the people that are on the feed, they're going to want to see more.
Mm-hmm. They want to swipe. And no, but it's so true. I mean, it's the more they can see you and your team, if you have a team, the more they can connect and the easier it is to sell to them because they already have some common ground with you. There is no like even for me, I post my breakfast. It's the same toast I've had for over a decade. I've had the same breakfast, literally the exact same breakfast. And I started doing it as a joke. People have sent me toasters. People have sent me things with toast on it. People will message me if I don't have toast. Literally, they will message me and be like, where's your toast pick? So it sounds funny, but how many of those people have become clients is insane. Because again, it's like relatable. It's just about being relatable and fun. So I love Instagram stories. And I know that for all clients that you do it more, like you said, it's just great engagement.
Yeah. No, it just, I don't know. It just makes me, some of the stuff that people come up with is just genius because it's fun. I mean, because like you said, you get to know a side of someone that you don't normally, they're so straight laced when we see them at weddings. And so, but then they let their guard down and it just brings the human side. Well,
100%.
Yeah. It's funny too, because I'm a big basketball. I have season tickets to Sacramento Kings. I love basketball. And I had a bride this last summer that was a Warrior girl. Actually picked me to DJ at her wedding, even though it was the wrong team, but she knew I love basketball. And that's how we connected. And she even brought it up during her thank you speech at the wedding. So it just like, it was totally, because I didn't even know it until we did her final meeting. She's like, well, so we're going to be doing a performance. And she went through the whole thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm a Kings fan and I love basketball. She goes, that's why I picked you. And it's like, it was that aha moment that just letting myself out there really, and showing all sides of yourself. It was, the gig over someone else.
Oh, 100%. And like you said, it's just a memorable thing when they were comparing you to someone else because they're going to have more than one option. They went, oh, wait, like I love seeing them online. I love seeing like that, like it gets, it can be something that small that again makes a booking and makes money just by being you.
Yeah. All right. What have we not talked about? Because I feel like we've gone a long way, but lead us down another road.
I have two more things I would like to discuss with you today.
Let's go.
So first is when we're thinking about platforms, since we're on the platform train, you're probably like, okay, well then Adrienna, where else should I be, right? We have our website, we have our blog, we have our Instagram, TikTok, TBD, don't know where it's going to go. The other platform that I would recommend, because there's so many, but honestly, the only other platform that I think would be worth it other than like doing a newsletter funnel, but that's again, totally different strategy, doesn't need to be on people's radar right away. Pinterest. Always hot, always confused when I am starting a new client and there's only 3 people for me to compete with because I'm like, I can dominate this keyword because I have 47 of you on Instagram and I have 3 of you on Pinterest. Like easy peasy, easy peasy. I guarantee in your city, your competition is a third or fourth of what you have on Instagram. I have yet to find a single city where it's not that, like at all. It is some reason still untapped. Cannot for the life of me figure out. If you have a blogging strategy, do Pinterest. Point blank. If you don't have a blogging strategy, Pinterest isn't for you. Just not a good ROI. Just don't worry about it. Focus on Instagram and video. Totally fine. If you have a blogging strategy and you're like, I'm putting blogs in the ether and no one's reading them, it's for a few reasons. One, maybe it's not really done SEO wise. Or two, Google is more likely to show stuff when it has like powerful signals, right? It's going to be like, oh, it's posted on Pinterest, posted in an Instagram bio. Like it wants to see these connections. And Pinterest is like the easiest way for you to like make a connection of being like, I'm an expert in this topic, is posting on Pinterest because you're already making images and already have content. So Pinterest, if you have a blog, really consider a strong Pinterest strategy. It's literally SEO with pictures. Like it's 100% the exact same strategy. You keyword the title, you keyword the description, you keyword the images, you post it. Like it is very similar. If you're comfortable with that type of strategy, hands down, our clients are like, how did my business blow up? And I'm like, blogging and Pinterest is how your business blow up. It nothing to do with Instagram. So definitely untapped potential for probably everybody listening.
Well, it's funny because Pinterest came out. I remember going to conferences and it was, I mean, I want to date myself, but it probably even 10 years ago, they were like, you need to be on Pinterest. You need to be on Pinterest. And it's funny that it's still untapped.
It's so crazy to me too, because I remember when I first had Pinterest, it was when you had a request, you had to be a blogger and you had a request. So back in my day when I was, working in retail, I thought I was like a bridal influencer before it was a thing. I was a blogger. So I had a blog where I talked about weddings, right? I had like a wedding blog. And I remember getting my Pinterest like acceptance and being like, I've officially made it. Thank you. And like it grew our retail shop. Like we had people coming in the door through Pinterest, and it's like a decade later and it's still, people are always like, are you sure? And I'm like, very rarely, in very few situations, do we not suggest it. It's just an easy add-on with blogging. So a really great, is it time consuming? Of course, like any platform. But if you're already writing the blogs, adding that extra like 30 minutes a week, can be a game changer for you.
All right. Love it. So we got to be on Pinterest.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because nobody else is. So you might as well join me on there.
All right. What's the next one?
So the last kind of thing, and it's kind of has to do with marketing, but it also has to do with like consumer behavior, because it's a soapbox that I would like to be on, if you don't mind. We need to have,
let's go.
Especially because of Reddit. So this is really coming up because, y'all need to be price transparent, because if you're not, the couples are going to control the pricing narrative of the industry. So the reason I'm saying that is in the last like 6 months, couples, I don't want to out certain things. So I have to be really careful so I don't make Reddit mad. Couples, just because couples have spreadsheets and websites that they are crowdsourcing vendor pricing on. For venues, there's a specific one where I can find literally even the Ritz. Like we're talking like all price points of venues. If I want to know what one of the top photographers in the world is charging right now, I know exactly what spreadsheet to look at because it's living on Reddit. It's living in these Facebook groups.
Okay.
We can't gatekeep pricing anymore because, so a few weeks, I actually was talking to Megan Ely about this a few weeks ago. So a few weeks ago,
my sister. I don't know if you know that.
I do know.
Okay.
I know you love Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
Which my husband got me into years and years ago. I sent her TikTok a few weeks ago, hopefully not RIP TikTok, but a girl who's planning a wedding in Chicago posted the list of all the photographers she was looking at and their pricing. And some of the vendors were like, that's outdated pricing. And she's like, well, I got it from your website, so I don't know what to tell you. And people blew up. And the comments were couples being like, thank you for sharing. I'm adding it to my spreadsheet. Like, and some vendors were smart and were like, hey, yeah, that's my pricing. That's exactly what I charge. It's not a secret anymore, guys. Your pricing is not a secret. It shouldn't be. If you're trying to market in today's day and age and you don't have pricing, it's going to be really hard for me to do my job because I know for a fact you're going to miss out on inquiries. So it's like, you could pay me all the money in the world. You could pay ads all the money in the world. But if we're not controlling the pricing narrative, it's kind of like, well, what's the point? So price transparency is just kind of has to happen, because if not, I'll know where to find your pricing online, which means your couples know, which means it might be outdated.
So with that said, where's a big trend to do ranges or just be
Oh
out
yeah, of
there?
course.
Like, is that still a thing or?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So having that on your website is good.
Yeah, the biggest thing is they just want to know ranges. Like they literally don't need it, like, because I know you can't quote them. Like, so for example, when you outsource to me, it could be $500, it could be 15,000. Like I got a huge gambit, just like you do. Ranges. So I recommend average price per spend for certain people. So for stationery, we work with a lot of stationery clients, and I'm like, do a price per spend. Like our average couple spends $100 per person. For an elevated day of paper experience, it's $150 per person. They just want to know, are you in their price point? And even in our big budget couple subreddits, like there's a subreddit called Big Budget Brides, and they will say the word budget. I have a $1.2 million budget. I'm looking for a venue. Like someone recently posted, they had $600,000 venue budget. Okay. And they use the word budget because they're not like us, like just because they have lots of money, right? They said, I'm looking for a venue, $600,000 buyout budget. And they went to Reddit to look for it because they couldn't find the pricing online. And they were like, someone please tell me I can afford this. And the answer is, imagine if you were a venue, you'd be like, yeah, you can buy out my venue.
Yeah.
Like, so it's,
How many days?
like exactly. Like you want the next month? Like that's fine. So exactly. Like they're using it to crowdsource too. So averages is fine. Like they just want to know, were you 400,000 or 600,000? If you 1,000 or 5, like averages, totally fine. They don't want you to give them exact pricing. They just want to know if you're affordable in their price point. That's it.
So, okay. So as a vendor, having ranges or what should we be doing to help drive the narrative to keep it, more like not being like that one person that was like, oh, that's my outdated, like what's something that a wedding vendor could do with this information?
Yeah. So just make sure it has like on your website, like your price point ranges. So an average couple, our photography averages, 6,000 to 8,000, giving them some kind of like range. I prefer ranges or averages versus starting at, because we all know the starting at is not usually what they end up paying.
No.
I think, so I say no starting at, I say averages, and like, be strategic with it too, because the biggest thing when it comes to pricing, so I'll use a photographer because that they always want to be at certain price points. So photographers, it's like, okay, I want to start booking $15,000 packages, but I'm actually only booking 10. Okay. On your website, because we don't want to be too low that a planner won't refer us. We don't want to be too high, right? It's that money game with your planners. Anyone who works in the higher end space know too low can be bad, just like too high can be bad. So we'll kind of, mathematically think, okay, you want to be 15, you're at 10. We're going to say your range is like 9 to 13 or 10 to 14. Like we're going to give them enough that someone who's higher isn't going to think you're too cheap and someone lower isn't going to think you're too expensive. So that's why I tend to like ranges for a lot of people, just because it kind of gives them that nice little like bubble.
I don't know. When I go to a website, when I'm like shopping for myself, I love to get a range. It's all right. You get a real idea how much this plumber's going to cost to spend,
Exactly. Because, their couples know it's going to be custom quoted, but they just want to know if you're even in their conversation. And I think it just also has to do with younger generations don't want to get on the phone with us. So they're only going to get on the phone or a video if they like at least know you're in their range. Like no one wants to hop on a call and be told they can't afford you. Like,
yeah.
Nobody wants that.
I feel like you're doing the consumer a service, but you're also doing yourself a service without having to respond to all these inquiries if they're not in your wheelhouse.
100%. Like it's you want inquiries that are better fit. So if we don't have somewhat of a range, and then you can send them a more detailed stuff later, but at least give them some kind of general, I average this. You cool? Yes, no.
Yeah. Cool.
Yes. You want to be my friend? Yes or no?
Yeah. You remember in this I'm older than you, but you used to send little notes, you go out with me, yes or no, and you send it over to the girl. That's
yes, like a little letter. Like that's all we want, is we just want to know, are we going to be friends or not?
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
All right. So now with all this information, what do you think a wedding vendor needs to like, everything? I mean, this is all amazing stuff that you talked about today. So where do we go from here? I guess that's the biggest thing.
Okay, so your first step is you're going to Google yourself and you're going to see what comes up. You're going to see, are you on Reddit? Are you on any other platform? And does anything look outdated? It's super simple. It'll take you 2 minutes.
Yep.
Your second step is I want you to take a look at your website. I want to make sure it's working really well for you, especially if you're doing strategies that, like we talked about today, where we're driving them to your website. Please do not have that be the reason you don't book them, especially when it's like 100% in your hands. This isn't like an uncontrollable algorithm, right? Like this is something you physically like you own. So check your website. I want you to make sure, do I have up-to-date images? Do I have pricing? Is my branding consistent visually? So that way, when they're coming off of all these other platforms, they're like, oh, okay, this is the same person. And then I want you to think about when it comes to your social media strategy. So for Instagram, okay, do I need to hire someone for some weddings this year so I can get some content? And then what are ways that I can incorporate stories or some kind of more personal mementos in there? So that way I'm really connecting with the audience. Because I think that's going to be such a big part of the differentiators. Like whenever we think about all the youngins coming into the industry, because like we get older and they get younger, the reason a lot of times they're killing it.
Yeah, our clients stay the same age. Yeah,
exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
The reason they're usually killing it is because their face is there 24/7. So I'm not saying you have to be there 24/7, but even if you're on once a week, what are ways that you can interact more with your audience?
Yeah. And I mean, someone that kind of went through this process starting in June of last year, like it was hard at first, but now it's like I look for things to record and I don't care if I look fat in the video anymore. I don't worry, I am who I am and people gotta love me the way I am. And people that like me are going to connect with me, if they like what they're hearing. And
100%.
Anyway, yep. I think you left out another important step. They got to hire you because I think you are absolutely me. So that's the last step. We're going to leave it.
Yes, hire me and I'll do it all for you. You don't have to do it anymore.
Anyway. All right. So, I mean, we went over all the tips. Something that I like to do when we get to the end is I always like to ask my guests what a favorite app that you're using right now. Because in a world of weddings, we all love apps. So what's your favorite app you go to? Other than TikTok, because it's maybe...
I was going to say, wait, you mean other than TikTok?
Yeah, other than that, because it sounds like...
Ooh, okay. Okay, so I would say if I couldn't have because it would have been Reddit. Honestly, I love Threads. I think Threads is like I love the wedding industry on Threads. Everyone's way nicer on Threads than they are on Instagram. I don't know what it is about it. I feel like my algorithm understands me really well on Threads too. So that is my and I don't use it for market research, surprisingly. Like it's the only app where I am not in the wedding world. And for me, that's I love that. Like I like having one space where I'm not wedding focused. And I'm just talking about books and music with other vendors. So I love Threads.
Cool. And that's Instagram's take to go after Elon Musk, right?
Yes. We're trying to take him down one little thread at a time. We'll see.
He's got too much money, that guy. But anyway, I live in California and like literally every other car on the road in California is a Tesla. So
oh yeah, I bet. I saw a Cybertruck for the first time like 2 months ago and I was like, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I never saw one out here. I guess, in Philly, maybe there's more, but I was driving through Philly and I was like, oh, there's a Cybertruck. I hadn't seen one of those in Wisconsin.
The weirdest thing you'll ever see in your entire life. Yeah. And it's funny too, because my 10-year-old daughter hates Tesla and this is what she does to it every time she sees Tesla, which is, that is her, I'm sure you figured out what to do.
Yeah. I love that.
I'm a bad guy because I'm like, oh, you may want to give your salute to one of those cars over there.
To Tesla.
That's what we say. So anyway. All right. So how do we get in contact with you? How do people find you, hire you, all the above?
Yeah. So you can come find me at avaandthebee.com. I'm in the Instagrams on the daily with my stories. So come tell me your favorite breakfast food. Hop in my DMs at avaandthebee, and we would love to help you guys out.
Well, I can't thank you enough because this will actually, I feel like I'll learn as we go, learning from you as we go through this and some things we need to do. check some things off the list. You just gave me more things to do. So as we go into 2025.
But it's a good list.
It is. Like the
Good
Reddit and the Pinterest are the two things that I need to go to Reddit. I need to get our stuff focused on Pinterest again. So,
yes. I love that.
anyway, thank you so much. Love having you here. Also, if folks, don't forget to love us, like us, review us all on all the platforms. We'd love to hear that as well. So I can't thank you enough for being here, and we'll see everyone next time.
To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mind Your Wedding Business podcast, brought to you by Wedding IQ. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode. Please get in touch with me if you have a topic you would like for me to cover, or if you are in the area of your business you're struggling with, let us know. We'll be happy to help. I encourage you to check out our other episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're a fan, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love for you to subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. It helps others find our podcast so they can learn from our guests too. Thanks again for listening.